Good afternoon and welcome to United TV. My name is Kamal Arkan. Um, Today we are going to have our 2 p.m. sessions with one of our client managers, Alt Sentai. He's going to be helping me with the questions, but he'll be behind the scene so that he doesn't get in trouble with the topics that we discuss. So 28th Eurasian Economic Summit coming up. This is an event that's going to take place in Istanbul on May 7 and 8, 2025, as a member of Marmara Foundation and the U.S. representative of the foundation. I try to take more active roles. And so far, we have 20 different countries who are going to participate, 11 former presidents, one royalty, one autonomous governor, 3 speakers, 2 ministers, 7 former prime ministers, and 7 former ministers who are already confirmed. And this morning, I was able to talk to Dr. Aziz Sancar. He's one of the Nobel Prize winners in chemistry, and he actually is confirmed that he's going to join us on May 7 and 8. I believe he's going to be mainly there on the May 8th because of his schedule. So this is a really important event to reflect and communicate the issues in economy, peace, and the other social issues in Turkey, and being able to be the bridge between um, government and the social uh, organizations, and also communicate some of these issues and having the dialogue with European countries as well as the other countries who are participating in the event. It's going to be extremely interesting and successful. Dr. Akan Suar is our president, and he is putting a lot of effort for this. And I'm actually really excited to see what's going to happen and how this event is going to take place. So we can actually start with our sessions with questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are all great updates about the Marmara Foundation and the 28th Eurasian Economic Summit. Sounds like it's going to be a great event. We're excited. We're waiting for it as well. Our first topic of discussion today for the United TV, we're going to start with one of your areas of expertise, healthcare. What are some of the most significant challenges facing the healthcare system today, and how can recent or upcoming legislation address these issues?
So the issues on healthcare, there are so many issues, but since you are asking the most challenging issues that we are facing today, well, the cost is going to be one big challenge for all of us. Now, in 2000, I'll say probably in 2010, just from our company standpoint, what we were paying was 1/3 of what we are paying today for healthcare for our employees. So it used to be extremely affordable, and 10 years later, here we are with 3 times more. And not knowing where this money goes, and even though we are a healthcare provider, we are not on the hospital side or the pharmacy side of this business. And there are a lot of issues that's happening that the cost needs to be really controlled. In terms of control prescription drug prices is another problem. Today we have um, uh, one of the drugs that I know of, just because from the value-based agreements we are able to see the cost, and for a monthly cost of $26,000 for some, and not knowing what the outcome is and not to monitor the outcome properly, can we actually really pay and afford these and not to actually interfere with the drug prices? I don't think that's possible. So we really need to have creative way to deal with that as well. And also, what we know is the mental health issues, and this is it's an unfortunate problem that we have to deal with. Many countries are dealing with this, but not at the level that we are. Mental health crisis from the number of providers who are available and the number of patients where there are too many of them. It's actually becoming a very difficult issue to deal with. And there are some ways to actually help how we are going to actually solve these issues. So one of them is can we actually engage primary care practices to see if we can actually fund them better. For example, as you know, in United Medical, we have 2 social workers. And having a social worker makes a huge impact on our patient management, especially on the mental health issues, social determinant of health related issues. And this is where we feel like we can actually have a better control. So, well, if you're a small primary care practice, even if we give you resources, you're not going to be able to use them properly, or you won't be able to hire these people. So I think in terms of solution, maybe I'm actually, advancing the question to a next level where, these are the challenges, but what can be done, because we are a healthcare provider. And from the from that angle, I see the other problem of the scale is the problem. Like if provider office with 2 is trying to do the provider office with 20, how's that going to be possible? Because if they have to really have access to the same resources, and this is part of the issue as well. So that, how is that going to be actually fixed? In my opinion, accountable care organizations are solutions for those who don't want to give up the full autonomy, but benefit from the integration from clinical and from the financial. So, and funding these better and promoting these better from the government standpoint, I believe that is another way of taking care of these challenges, because these challenges are not going to go anywhere, and it's not going to be fixed by one administration. So that's where we are with the healthcare.
Okay. So we also talked about some of the healthcare reforms last week in terms of the Medicaid cuts and such. What role do you think the government should play in ensuring healthcare affordability and quality in these issues?
So when you look at what government should be doing, is one, what we expect from the government is to regulate and also provide some supervision to prevent monopoly in any of the service areas in healthcare. Like if you think about what we have even in the state of Delaware today, in Newcastle County, there's really just one big hospital system, and there's not many options. So when you don't have options, that hospital system can actually determine how much the cost is going to be. What we know, like for example, one of those big hospital systems, like the CEO has a 50% salary increase in 2 years. Why? When their profit actually went down more than 40%, if I'm not mistaken. So how can, because these are public records, right? So how can you actually explain a 50% increase on a CEO salary when the profit, although it's a non-profit there, as you know, they are still making profit? How is it going to be possible to explain almost 40% reduce on profit and then 50% increase on a CEO salary? So we need better supervision, and Delaware has different ways to handle this. As you know, SB 350 was one of the bills, or is it HB? It was an HB 350. And that actually has a huge, perhaps could have an impact, but now the hospital systems are suing the state of Delaware. So not only they're increasing their salaries by 50%, but they're also suing the state. And if they have more resources financially, the resources again is nonprofit, meaning that the funds is being supported with the taxpayers' support, taxpayers' money. And now we are now going to be responsible for the legal expenses from the state level. And again, the nonprofit is also supported by us. So we are consumers, people who live in Delaware are going to pay twice for this legal battle. So this is the monopoly that we see. And then this, going back to your question, how we can actually, what we can expect from the government is regulate and oversee these types of activities. So, and also support on the IT is going to be important, as I mentioned earlier, with the scale issue of like some practice at this level, some practice at a very high level. how are we going to actually expect the same thing if they have to stay in the business? And they have to stay in business because we have a huge physician shortage. So we cannot tell the two provider office to shut down, or like we cannot force them to join a bigger group. If they have to stay in business, then if they don't stay in business, we are going to have an even bigger physician shortage. So that means we really need to kind of support them from the IT standpoint, infrastructure standpoint, and that's what we would probably expect the government's role in the healthcare. Now, one other thing that I want to mention, the issue and anxiety over Medicaid and Medicare cuts. I actually did review this very closely, and I want to give you like 3 different numbers from 3 different areas of Medicare. As you know, Medicare has Part A, B, C, and D. The inaccurate claim payments in the Part B in 2023, I believe, is 7.6%. That's equivalent of almost 32 billion. Well, billion is, it's not million, it's billion with the B. Part C, the inaccurate claim payment rate is 5.6%, and that's about 19 billion. And from the Part D, that number is at 3.7% at 4 billion. So just from these 3 elements of Medicare, not including Part A yet, that's about 56 billion. I think when what President Trump is trying to do when they are trying to be more efficient in terms of cost savings is trying to eliminate these types of errors to make sure that this is not happening. So this is a waste. So now this is one part of it. So there is the waste of payments, inaccurate payments. But the other part of it is, and you would actually know this from our patient base, when we are giving patient rosters, sometimes we are assigned patients to us, to our groups. And you'll see some patients who are never seen us. And not only that, most of those patients, they don't see anyone else. Now, for that group, what it means to lose this coverage, or do they even need to be on this coverage, is on the Medicaid side, is another question that we need to kind of ask ourselves. So I see the efficiency being a partial solution to some of the trouble that we are going through, and then we'll probably wait and see. The PR side of this issue is really important, how we are communicating these, because one can take the cut, like when you say as soon as Medicaid cut, that can become a huge issue for public, because if no one reads these days, no one listens. They look at the headline and then they're like, oh my, so Medicaid cut is coming. Well, we have this with our own physicians. They say the same thing. No one is bothering to read what's behind that. Now, that you cannot undermine, because all of a sudden that perception can become the reality and take over what you are trying to do, and then it will stop you to do the right thing. So that's where we are with the healthcare issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Again, as you said, it's very important to not jump directly at the headlines and do more research about it. And especially with these sessions, you really help our audience understand these issues better with giving real life examples and real life numbers. So thank you for that. Aside from that, just piggying back off of the politics in the US, just really wanted to shift gears to our Congresswoman, Sarah McBride of Delaware. I'm sure a lot of people watching the show today have seen the video in the Congress, how she was
on decorum
how they
from a party that
are
incited
behaving
an
towards her.
insurrection.
How do you think this would reflect
I
broader
appear to live
societal
rent-free
attitudes
in the
towards
minds of some of
transgender
my
individuals
Republican
in political
colleagues.
positions?
I
Well, it's not
wish
about the
that they would
person
spend
being
even a
transgender or not.
fraction
It's about
of the time that they spend
someone,
thinking about me, thinking about how to lower the
who
costs
has,
for American families.
um,
I wish they would spend a
who's actually
fraction
a
of the
person, a
time that they
human,
spend
right? So
thinking
that
about
doesn't
me.
matter. Like, I can label you in so many different ways. If I don't respect you,
I now
then
recognize the
what
representative from
does that
Delaware,
mean,
Mr. McBride.
right? So I can like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking
see a
Member
lot of
Keating,
things
also
that's not
wonderful.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
sorry.
could you
When you
repeat
look
your
at these
introduction again,
people,
please?
and there's one picture,
Yes,
if
it's
you
a,
can help
it's
us
a,
with that.
we have set the
Representative-
standard on the floor of the
This
House.
started with.
And I'm
I
simply,
was actually kind of.
What is that
disgusted
standard,
when
Mr.
I
Chairman?
saw this. There's one before that, Ethan, the one with Keith Sell, and he's bringing up while he does. Now, think about it this way. So you know what's happening in back in Turkey, right? So now, if you read if you go by the media, you will say that hey, there's this dictator in Turkey, right? The Western media is that's how they are portraying President Erdogan, and then yet what we see him doing is the other picture can come now that he's actually having an iftar when they break the fasting with one of the transgender singers, Bülent Ersoy, and if you look at the background of both individuals, you would think that they wouldn't be at the same table, but they are at the same table. And President Erdogan doesn't call Bülent Ersoy he, right? So this is a supposed to be Middle Eastern country, as not as advanced as the West, and then here the president, who's supposed to be very very far from these people, respecting the individual, and then that's that's what I see as like the right behavior, because it's human. Like if you are a human, then you would respect the other individual. Now I see this guy Keith Sell, Madame Keith Sell, we are going to call him from now on in every discussion. There is a person who's in front of him, and this is a serious comedy assignment. And Sarah McBride is my congresswoman from Delaware. So how dare this guy is able to insult her in front of all these people? That's just shameful. I hope he deals with this issue in his very immediate family, that he can actually have some empathy. So, because this is also so cruel. So, professionally, we have to respect every individual. And we are not talking about someone dressing as a man or a woman. We are talking about someone biologically went through the whole process, and that's who she is today. And we, from Delaware, we elected her, and she actually got one of the highest voting rates ever. So, Keith Sell needs to shut the fuck up and just respect our congresswoman. That's all I need to say. And he's 73 years old. 73 wasteful years is what his life is. And if he needs to have some examples and kind of understand how human being actually behaves, then he can go to Turkey and spend some time with President Erdogan and then see how he deals with these issues and how he respects other people with different backgrounds. So this is all it is. So because Sarah is also a very close friend of mine, and I talked to her this morning, and she's going to be part of the show in the studio, I think in April. And the way that she handles this is, I was so proud of her. I was upset and angry when I saw the situation, but when she was called Mr., and then she calls the guy Madame. So that's what you're going to get, Madame Keith Sell. That's all I want to say. So before I get in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is totally unacceptable, and it seems unprofessional as well. And I've definitely seen on social media my other friends that don't even live in Delaware reacting to this, because it's totally, again, unprofessional and unacceptable, as you said as well. Another video that aired this past week was about Matt Meyer, when he was asked about Elon Musk on live TV. As you know, Elon Musk recently moved his company, formerly known as Twitter, now X, out of Delaware to Texas. There were some discussions about the Court of Chancery in Delaware, and it being one of the biggest advantages in the state of Delaware for big corporations like X, like Twitter, to form their businesses here. So, can you please walk us through how Court of Chancery is a big advantage for Delaware and how it works?
So, well, this is extremely important, and this was one of the reasons that we were keeping a distance with Matt Meyer during the primaries. Now, since then, because he's the Democratic governor for Delaware, we did reach out to him to make sure that he's invited to do the state speech and discussion here in this show, because John Carney has done that in the last 3 times. Haven't heard back from him, but then I saw this video last night. It's one of the national TV channels, news channels. And I
If
think
Elon's watching right now,
that one, but the one before, I believe, Ethan. So, so the issue was he knows we had the issue with Elon Musk, right? And then he posed this problem with Elon Musk, saying that, hey, when the guy says Elon, and then he goes, Elon who? And that you may remember that from the Jeff Bezos discussion with Elon, and when Elon made fun of Jeff, saying that Jeff who, but you are not Jeff Bezos. Like, you are the newly elected governor in Delaware. You have a lot of issues. It's fine if you don't. We can play that. People can actually Google the other videos. It was just yesterday. So on that, where he's like making fun of Elon Musk, I first don't believe that. I don't think that's the reality, because his best friend Phil Shaw is very close with Elon Musk. So Phil Shaw, we remember, who put almost $2 million to the campaign funds to support Matt Meyer. So, and since he had the very same problem with Elon Musk, so I cannot believe that Matt actually is really keeping a distance with Elon Musk, because I believe that Elon Musk also supported him financially. Now, what's more important for us today is to understand the Delaware Chancery Court and what that means. Many people, again, may not know what that is. They don't understand, or they don't have to deal with it before, and then they didn't know why it's happening. So this is a very unique court system. Number one, there's no jury. There's no jury trials. It's fast, and also judges who are part of the Chancery Court are the extremely knowledgeable people in the area. And then this is also a court that's so important for the rest of the country, because the rest of the country, other courts are using our decisions here as the precedent. So now, that's one part of it. The quality and what business needs is, from that point, it's important. Now, why this is more important for Delaware is what Matt Meyer needs to pay attention. Now, this is our state, so we are not going to let anyone to ruin what we have here. That includes Matt Meyer. So being on national shows and talk about some of the things and make fun of Elon Musk is not going to get anywhere. Now, 60% of the Fortune 500 companies are incorporated in Delaware. That's 60%. That's about 1.8 million businesses incorporated outside of these. So the state budget is about $6 billion, and we get more than $1 billion just from the Chancery Court, because all those issues and legal problems needs to be dealt in Delaware, and that's our kind of niche. And what you don't want to do is to ruin that. Now, this court was judged before as like, hey, there's no diversity, there's no equal opportunity. That's not correct. So if you remember, John Carney was here last time when he was here. We talk about this, where he says and I know that I believe what he did. We try our best to make sure that people who are appointed for these seats are the best. So it's not going to be diversity or equality, like driven. Hey, you have to have X many of this, X many of that. Whoever is the best needs to be there because, again, this is everyone is watching this. Like everyone is watching these court decisions. So then that's how we are able to actually, make almost 20%, close to 20% of our fiscal budget needs comes from this. So now Elon Musk had an issue, and I saw a post from Republican candidate Mike Rubino yesterday, and he was 100% right about this. The way that Elon Musk was making fun of Matt Meyer was making fun of Elon Musk was, if you treat the business owner like that, so they're going to think that the next one is going to be someone who may have some issues, and then they're just voicing out their opinions, and our governor is going to make fun of them, or are we going to take certain? Are we going to make some certain decisions and have a plan of action to fix the potential issues? So this is where Brian Townsend comes into the picture, and he sponsored a bill, the SB 21, and this is kind of like how we are dealing with the problem that Elon Musk actually kind of started. Phil Shaw fueled this with supporting Matt Meyer. Matt Meyer did side with a lot of people who go after the Chancery Court. So we need to make sure I'm watching this very closely. Now, just because he's the governor right now doesn't mean that I have to put up with all the wrong decisions that he has. He needs to do the right thing for Delaware, not for himself. So whatever promises were made, it cannot be over Delaware's benefits. So now that's why maybe he's panicking, and that's why like it was so embarrassing to see him last night. I'm like, this is our governor, and then the guy is asking something else, and then he's trying to make the joke that Elon did before, and then he kind of crumbles. Like he just makes zero sense. Why would you put yourself in that situation? I mean, that's kind of embarrassing. And I keep reminding people that his wife is the emergency room doctor, has zero impact on how he's running the government. So your wife can be whatever, or your husband can be whatever, but if you don't have it, you cannot keep saying that just because you are the emergency room doctor, you know the whole healthcare system. Well, they're part of the problem. Because why do we see so many patients in the emergency room who shouldn't be seen in the emergency room? I mean, you can argue with those things, and he needs to really just focus on Delaware. And we are not going to let that go. So we have elections every 4 years. So the worst case is 3 more years.
Yeah, absolutely. Just picking back off of that, we talked about Elon Musk and the Trump administration. Now, the next topic of discussion is going to be around the tariffs and economic policy. So we talked about the tariffs briefly last week about the tariffs regarding Mexico, Canada, and now the talks are ongoing for the steel tariffs. And I actually just saw an article earlier this week as well that some of the wealthiest men that support the Trump administration, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they lost $67 billion in a day in the market because of these tariffs and how it affected the market. So how do you think current economic policies address the challenges posed by inflation and labor market fluctuations?
So I think there are a couple of things that I want to actually point out here. In the last 30 days, what was wiped out of the stock market is about $5 trillion. Now, is this the real money? So, stock market, right? So this is just this paper. I'm giving you this paper, and I'm saying that today this is $10. Tomorrow is $40. Well, this cost us 50 cents, right? So, is there a real value in these papers, stocks? That's one thing that we need to kind of remember, because there isn't. So the company that's worth, 60 billion, well, all they have is like maybe 5 billion. The 55 is the perception. So when they lose 10 billion out of the 60, they don't lose anything. It's just like it was already overrated, and now they lost some overrated number, and then they are still overrated. So the stock market actually is not something that needs to be taken literally. So because all those numbers are monopoly numbers, so monopoly dollars, so they're not real. So one of my friends, we had a discussion when some companies, when they go public, um, something that's worth $1, as soon as they go public, because they're able to do certain things in certain ways, that now they're able to borrow more, boom, like $1 worth of stock becomes $12. Well, there is no value generated. There is nothing solid, nothing tangible. So this is something that we need to kind of keep in mind. Now, does this actually answer the question? No, because every time we have inconsistency, unstable situations, stock market respond to those right away. So, and sometimes it does to kind of give a message. And I think what's happening with these tariffs and with the last 30 days pattern, what we see is many of them are not happy. Now, why are they not happy is, again, that's something that we have to be careful. Why is because, is it just from the United States standpoint, or is it global? So who's just 100% United States today? Not many. So all those countries are already global countries, global companies. So therefore, when certain things may benefit us here, it may hurt them somewhere else. Therefore, they are not going to be supporting the decisions that current administration is making to make the United States better. So this is something that we need to remember. So, but again, when we insist on certain things, the do we want, like, what's the right way to go with this? So far, we haven't seen any positive outcome from this. Why? Is because everything that we have seen. So are we going to be able to make the Canada, like, it sounds kind of like, I have my best friend lives in Canada, and I used to make fun of him 20 years ago. Hey, you guys are just another state for us. That's funny in friends discussion, but not funny when it comes from the president, because this is a serious business. It needs to be taken seriously. So you cannot make fun of people. You cannot insult people. And you have to be believable. So Canada is Canada. If you want to have a war with Canada, go and fight. But if you are trying to say that I'm going to make things so difficult, trust me, they will find alternatives. Same thing with Mexico, same thing with China, same thing with others. So I personally believe that there's a good balance with tariffs and making things more affordable for people here in the United States. And I'm not fully disagreeing with Trump on this issue, but not the way that so far it's being presented, because I think the main message is kind of lost in this. So if there's an auto factory just operating in Mexico just because certain things much cheaper, and we maybe lost 100,000 employees, or 100,000 people lost their jobs. So you have to look at it long term, what that means. So yes, some people are going to be able to afford certain things less expensive, but then many people won't be able to afford anything because they don't have a job anymore. So unless we address those issues, always you need to look after the country to see what's the long-term benefit from this. Now, Trump's struggle on this issue is he promised way too much. He said, from day one, I'm going to do this, and you're going to have a good, positive impact as soon as I'm the president. And he repeated this so many times that kind of raised the expectation to a very high level. So, well, with politics, you have to do that. But now it's actually going after um, uh, him. So it's biting him back, saying that, look, people are going to, there's the inflation, there's the supply chain issue, there's the stock market issue. All these things, if we are not able to manage, it can bring a bigger crisis. So I think the communication of this really needs to be done more properly, and not to really make fun of any situation or any country, and focus on the real issue. Real issues. I like, if I was running the country, and if I know that by doing X, Y, Z with tariffs and support the local economy and provide jobs for 100,000 people, well, I will do it. But if that's going to have a short-term impact negatively, and then it's going to have a positive midterm and long-term, then I would explain that. But we are not in politics, so you have to really get that seat before. You may remember what happened in Turkey is like the early pension for people who were so young. So, and this was part of the election promises from the opposition. And then what ruling party did, okay, so if opposition is promising that, and if people want that, in order to stay in power, we have to provide the same thing. It's one of the biggest mistakes that Turkey did ever. This cost of that is so unreal. Why? Is because of the politics. So we have some similar issues here. So we have to kind of separate the political promises from the reality. So what's right for the country is the main thing. Tariffs can actually protect here or other countries as well. So we know so many other countries who have much higher rates. Why? They want to protect their own local economies. So how is that going to happen if you just let everyone come into the market, and then that somehow they're able to provide it cheaper, but then your people are jobless? You have all these unemployment issues, and then that has a huge long-term impact on everyone. That's something that people really need to take their time and read it carefully. Whatever they hear, they need to hear it carefully and analyze it, because Trump may not be 100% wrong on this issue. It's just like his presentation, the way that he's delivering the message is wrong. But that doesn't mean that what he's doing is wrong. Although he needs to take that Keith Sell guy out of the seat, that's one thing. But on the economy, I think he's willing to do the right things. Now, I know today it's not part of our discussion, but BRICS, like President Biden didn't do anything for 4 years for BRICS. And that's a huge mistake. Not seeing that's coming, that was a huge mistake. So now we see that change today. Why that's important is because, well, as soon as you lose the global currency power, you're done. And you are letting that happen on the other side of the country, people that you do business with. So that's what's going to be a problem. So I think if Trump can find a better messenger for himself and take the things a little bit more seriously, we'll see some short-term negative impacts, but the long-term, midterm, and long-term, it's going to be the right thing for the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Just shifting the focus from the United States to your homeland, Turkey, and my homeland too, obviously. Obviously, you also spent more than half your life in the US here, but we still know how much love you have for Turkey. So let's talk about Turkey's EU membership. What do you think are the main barriers to Turkey's accession to the EU, and how can these be effectively addressed by both Turkey and the EU?
So the dynamics change in the region, in Europe and the Middle East. So I'm 51 years old, and 35 years at least of my life that I know that Turkey is trying to get into the European Union. Now, at some point, well, because I have the political science degree and interest in politics, we want to understand what's doable, what's real, whether or not we could get into this EU business. And at some point, you come to this point of realization of, hey, this is never going to happen because it's not about economics, it's not about culture. It almost comes down to religion. And why? Is because countries like Cyprus, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, like there's so many other countries. Maybe Romania is like, I may be wrong with that, but so many countries who are less almost everything from Turkey, then they are still able to get into EU because one main issue is the religion. So, but today it's changing because the US EU relationship is changing. So then, because that support is not there, EU is looking for more other alternatives to support its own domain. And well, Turkey is the second biggest army in NATO, and probably second or the first highest, maybe the second highest populated in Europe, and it's a huge country. So yes, it will come with its own problems, but it will bring a lot to European Union. Now, the issue that you are asking is, it's actually not related to this. I didn't do it for this one, but if you go back to the Erdogan and Bülent Ersoy and this Keith Sell and Sarah McBride, so the West has a really good way of painting these pictures through media and making things like Turkey doesn't have the same standards in terms of the human rights, in terms of the social issues, in terms of the economy, but that's not true. Why? Is because they are actually, in many ways, they are more advanced than we are here. I mean, I'm not saying in all, for everything, but there are some sizable that are better than us. So understanding this and addressing some of these issues, that's going to be the key. Now, Marmara Foundation president, Dr. Swer, was with me. It was in November, and we talked about this. And actually, I asked him directly, "Hey, do you really think that they're going to let us in?" And to his credit, he was more optimistic that time. And what I see today, he's probably right. So this is going to happen. So is it the best and the right time? I think so. So Turkey is in much better position, and EU is not. So either it's going to happen now or it's never going to happen again. So, and in my opinion, regardless of what everyone thinks, I think this is the right thing because it can bring certain standards in the areas of what we discussed with the human rights and other social issues, some oversight, some standards. Like just in the United States, not every state is at the same level. You know this, right? So if you go to Arkansas, I did. Don't go there if you don't have to. It's a different country, but they're part of the United States. I mean, the south part of Delaware is different than the north. So, well, New York is a different story, but not every part of New York is Manhattan. So upstate it's like totally different. So having these differences can actually be the strength of these organizations, and an EU can actually take advantage of Turkey's location, region, where we are located, and also economy, population. There's so much EU can benefit, and I believe Turkey is able to have a lot of good benefits. So I think it's the right time. So I think Dr. Swer was right. So I was less optimistic than my normal for this one, but now I am. I'm there with him at the same level. All right. These
Yeah.
are
These were our questions for today. if
so
you didn't
one
have
of the
anything
things
else
that
to-
we didn't actually prep for today, but maybe next couple of weeks that we would discuss. We talk about it's kind of related to what we just discussed with the EU and issues maybe that they may have with Turkey. Is this last thing with Andrew Tate? I know you follow them probably, and what Trump administration is doing with them. So how we were able to bring them from Romania, right? So these are criminals, but they're our criminals, and we were able to interfere with their with other countries' legal system, and then it was okay because we did it. So when the right thing is not something that it's right when you do it, and when it's done by someone else, it's not. So the right thing should be standard. There shouldn't be any hypocrisy, double standards. It should be when you do it, it's right. So then when I do it, it should be right. It cannot be other way around. So if we are bringing these people, and now we are actually treating them almost like really. I think they're extremely overrated. But one of the reasons that I was told that Trump administration is doing is because of the influence that they have on Gen Z. So they can be legally corrupted, but then still supported by our government. That's a problem. So I think we'll discuss this in the next couple of weeks. These are the issues that makes that actually it doesn't look good when we are clearly interfering, just like when Biden administration interfered with Trump's legal issues. It was all political. So when it's done in Turkey, it's a dictatorship. When it's done here, it's the democracy. That's not. I mean, you have to just choose which one is which. It cannot be just turn it around and it's just something else. That's not. It's the same thing. So if Biden is able to do that, and you call that democracy, and when Erdogan is doing it, it's a dictatorship. That's what EU needs to see. So it's all about our benefits. So whichever actually serves for us is what's right. So, and then sometimes those things are overlapping, and then that's where we kind of see ourselves in trouble. So doing the right thing is what we have to aim for. So, well, thank you for joining me with the questions, and thank you for listening to us and joining us. Our channel is growing. We are getting almost to 120,000 subscribers. Now we have an auto dub function available for the new videos. So that was kind of, that's how I get, happy these days with those types of recognitions. So YouTube actually does qualify certain channels, and that's hopefully that's going to make us available for more people in different languages real time. So we'll be back next week. We have a lot of confirmed guests. It's just the scheduling part is the challenge. Since we are Fridays at 2, it works for some, it doesn't work for some. But there will be a lot of people coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much for watching us. There, so you can let me know when it's time.